I'm Yeah. See them? We'll swing. We'll take photos of them with our camera and then zoom in on our phone.
Thank you. Make this one. Yep. Good show.
It's live.
Yeah. Get that. We are, just because you were a member, that's how we did it.
Oh, okay, because I was like, yeah, I don't think it was a card. Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Because last time I did, one of the times I did it, what's up? It didn't say walking. That's why I was like, okay. Oh, yeah, one of the times it said walking. It showed like a little bit. Yeah, and I was just like, oh, this time it's yeah, no, a little bit. Okay, cool. I don't even want to say hi to you. I just come here to eat, I spend money, and then you don't want to say hi to me.
Not enough money.
Listen, just
Yeah, we're not gonna, we already.
we're discussing this.
Me too.
Special is nice.
Have the wife get us some.
Yeah, you got it. Yesterday, we had a wine tasting. It was a gentleman from Italy. It was a kind of private.
Like Italian?
Yeah, it's a small vineyard. They don't sell to the source.
Well, they are.
No.
That's what it is.
I don't know what.
I just brought some.
Yeah, yeah.
And the pool's so.
Right.
You know, all the equipment.
I agree. You have a handout?
I don't see any. Well, oh, they're sitting on the chairs.
Oh.
How's the golf course going?
Sign me up.
Pretty good.
I'm sure you'll get
Howdy, how was your trip? I already ran it.
Well, finishing the executive column. Yeah, in the last group. Thank you. Push here, do. I was, you weren't there.
Hey guys, thanks for coming out. It's 5 o'clock and get this thing started for you. I would recommend that you probably can't see from back there. You don't have to, but I would recommend it. Yeah. All right, perfect. All right. to introduce the board here again. Changes here. I got some old faces, not old, you know what I'm saying. That's kind of a little here. We got a new board member, John. So, the last couple of months. Now, here I want to thank our staff over there. They've done a lot of work this year. The last couple of months. Nice to watch it. Matt working, Greg and Brandon, kind of everybody rowing in the same direction. It's been nice to have. So, thank you guys for that. So, we're going to get this thing started. We brought a guy in, Tom Olson from Club Benchmark. He's going to come in here and do about a 45-minute presentation for you guys. Kind of goes over where clubs are, where they're going, where we are, and kind of gives a whole rundown of that kind of stuff. So, thank you, Tom, for coming out. Let's go and get this thing started.
Thank you, Jason, for having me.
Where's the clicker?
Okay, my name is Tom Olson. If you're not familiar with club benchmarking, our founder, Ray Cronin, got on his club's greens committee, just an 18-hole golf course in a clubhouse in suburban Boston, back in about 2006. His first greens committee, and there was an argument going on between two of the members of the greens committee and who spent more money on golf course maintenance, their club or the club 7 miles down the road. And as Ray puts it, if you know anybody from South Boston, you're darn near this fight. So as this went on for about 20 minutes, Ray was sitting there, not one number had been thrown out, anything like that, so he raised his hand. He says, brand new, I always got a question. And he says, how do you know? And the guy said, well, how do I know what? How do you know that we don't spend as much as they do? Well, I know a guy on the board over at the other club, and I know we don't spend as much as they do. So there was never a number ever brought out in terms of that. So Ray's business acumen and background was in high-tech startups. So he figured, well, there must be industry benchmarks. I'll go in and take a look at that. And he was surprised to not find anything when it spawned here. Not dead. Not to find anything. So that was the epiphany for him to launch club benchmarking. And so it launched in 2009, and annually we get about 1,000 clubs data from 49 states and 5 Canadian provinces. Last spring we launched Club Benchmarking in Europe and Club Benchmarking. We have about 50 clubs in the UK, about 100 clubs in Australia. So it's interesting to see what their metrics are in relationship to North America. But not only that, we're well known for our finance and operations benchmarking, but we also do compensation and benefits benchmarking. Real estate and demographic data. Our CEO, Dr. Jim Butler, got his doctoral thesis in member motivation, attachment, loyalty, and employee engagement benchmarking at Iowa State. So we brought that scientific approach to our surveys as well, and do lots of town hall meetings, board education, finance committee meetings, those types of things around the country. There's 6 other gentlemen besides me that cover North America, and we have Jim, our CEO, on the left, and Ray Cronin, our founder, on the right there. And amongst all of us, we probably get in front of about 300 clubs annually. So we do this quite often, and the biggest thing that we're going to talk about today is how different the private club business model is on what we're used to, from the for-profit world. It's a very different entity. It was something that I struggled with, but I'm a former general manager myself for almost 15 years at the 3 different clubs. And because I went to school in Phillipsburg, went to St. Cloud State, so anybody that's a D or a CC fan, it's okay, right, from that perspective. But it was something that I had to wrap my mind around, and it's something that you're probably going to have to wrap your minds around a little bit too, because it is so counterintuitive to what we're used to. The club industry is a fragmented cottage industry where information disseminates quite slowly. It's one of those things that, hey, if you ask the question, which is faster, society or private clubs? It's kind of like the cross-country skier running up the hill. That's society. We're still lagging way behind. So understanding that's a key point. But the thing about that we have to understand is we have to start thinking more like owners and stewards of our club and not customers. Too often we think transactionally in what's going on in our private club, and we have to make sure that we're looking at this and we have to adapt and evolve or we're going to die. Things are changing, not only in society but in private clubs as well. This is a birth rate chart from our friends at the McMahon Group. They've been tracking this, and we've also been tracking it as well. And we know that the average age of someone joining a private club is 42 years old, has been for well over 30 years. And as you see there, you know, the boomers peak birth rate there was 1960, turning 42 in 2002. From that point, the Gen Xers are in terms of population. The major components of like there just weren't as many 42-year-olds that could join clubs. But the millennials, their peak birth rate is 1990. So they're turning 32 and 20, or excuse me, they're turning 42 in 2032. So we have a tailwind going. And as we look at the Gen Zs going, there's not that much of a dip that goes through there. So we have some consistency going forward. So that's a good thing. The difference is the millennials and the Gen Zs are joining differently than the previous generations before them, right? They want something for the entire family to do. So that's a different dynamic than what we're used to. Now, I would join a club for golf. A1, number 100%. My wife, if we don't have a pool, if there's not a fitness center, and the kids don't have something to do, kids camps and whatever, they're not going. It's just how it's kind of changed in that way. But again, the key question is, do we need to add anything here at Greeley that's going to help us attract that 42-year-old family so we can be relevant and competitive in our marketplace? It might be no, and that's okay. So then let's be the best version of ourselves that we can be. Not saying that we have to do all of these different things. One of the misconceptions that we hear all the time is if we raise the dues or the initiation fees, no one will join and members will leave. The data is quite clear. Clubs that have the highest initiation fees and the highest dues are the healthiest financially in the industry. Clubs that have the lowest fees and the lowest dues are the weakest in the industry financially. Again, clubs compete on the value that they offer, not the price that they charge. Again, that's a counterintuitiveness that we have to look at. But the reason that the weakest clubs, or the lower clubs that have lower dues and low initiation fees, is because they just don't have enough money. They don't have enough money for the experience that they want to have, and they don't have enough money to reinvest in the club so that their assets are fresh and up to date. We equate the state of the industry into 4 buckets: the red, orange, yellow, and green bucket. There's a lot there to see. I'm going to focus on just 2 points there. The red bucket, they pretty much shun change. They have what we call a weak balance sheet and basically negative net worth. We'll see your net worth here in a little bit, but the compounded annual growth rate we take from 2006 until now, and the reason we went back to 2006 is we wanted to see what clubs were doing prior to the economic meltdown. Because we didn't have any of this data or understand a concept that I'm going to talk about in a minute, a lot of clubs either reduced or eliminated the initiation fee. And what we're going to see is it's capital income that's the financial driver of clubs. And initiation fees being a major engine of the capital, component of the capital engine, cutting that off was really detrimental to some clubs. But the other thing is the culture of thinking in our clubs. Are we thinking like customers, or are we thinking like owners and stewards? I gotta find a good spot here. Test. Is that good? Yeah. Right. But then you can't see. When we go to the orange bucket, they have a lot of deferred maintenance still. They don't really generate enough of that capital income to reinvest in their current assets, so they're fresh and up to date. And so they tend to struggle with that as well. And most of the members are still thinking like customers and not owners and stewards in that regard. The yellow bucket clubs are generating enough to overcome inflation. They kind of episodically do projects here and there, but they really don't have what we would call a forward-looking capital plan and being proactive at replacement of their existing assets. And it's about a 50-50 split of customer versus owner-steward in the membership. Then the green buckets, they're the upper quartile of the industry. They have a forward-looking capital plan, meaning they're generating the amount of capital necessary to fund their future capital needs, and they're doing it proactively. And most of the members are thinking like owners and stewards in that regard. And then there's the crux. I don't know if any of you read The Crux by Robert Rummel. It's a pretty good book in terms of what strategies, and I think this is probably the business book that I've read when it comes to looking at strategy. But the premise of the book is looking at the problems that we have as an opportunity to be able to go at it. And what the crux is in the private club industry, what tends to happen is the boards turn over quite often. About a third. Is your board turnover a third? every year, roughly? Used to change that. But, generally, most clubs, about a third of the board turns over every year. You have a different president every single year. And because there's misconceptions on the private club business model, those things potentially change. And one of them that arises is, what other industry do you know of where the members or the customer gets to set the price of usage for themselves? I don't know of any, other than the private club world. What we know is about half of the industry have set the price too low. And it's human nature. Nobody wants to spend more than they have to, right? Is there enough money to field the staff to consistently provide the member experience to the members without burning them out, right? Because your number one asset is your staff. They provide the experience of membership, in terms of that perspective. So do we have, if we have, I equate it this way, are we a 3-star, 4-star, or 5-star service level? Whatever we decide, it's a choice, then we have to have the money allocated enough and have the people there to provide that level of experience on a consistent basis. And then the other thing, are the members contributing capital necessary to meet their future capital needs? Both what we call obligatory, which is the replacement of your existing assets, and any aspirational, which are things that you currently don't have that you might want to add, right? And those things are very difficult to do. And who decides and how do we know? And it's really this tug of war between operational governance and where we want to be, who we want to be. We're in the hospitality business. We provide a leisure and social experience on a campus in exchange for dues and fees. Members carry expectations of the leisure and social experience, and the professionals work to deliver the leisure and social experience in a manner that meets or exceeds that member experience. But the last bullet point is important. Money is necessary to deliver the leisure and social experience in accordance with the expectations, and that's where the financial model and the business model meet. Management does a lot to try to provide the level of experience for sometimes not enough money to be able to do it, and becomes very, very pressured. I'll tell you what, in this industry, they're very, very good operators because they tend to get to a break-even budget quite normally from that perspective. The footprint concept. What the footprint concept is this. Every club has its own unique footprint with a high fixed cost, and the goal is to properly fund the footprint, not only operationally, but capitally. And we can quantify that at a very high level, and it's the cost divided by the member count, giving you the cost per member. And the strategic governance side of it is the education of the members that it's on us to be able to provide that money necessary to fund the services and amenities and the fixed operating costs that are provided to us, and the capital money to be able to reinvest in the club so we have fresh and up-to-date facilities. One of the things that I noticed that members tend to like to do, we like to compare our dues with other clubs. And we have to be careful what that numeric number says, because what's another club's footprint cost versus ours? How many members do we have versus what they have? Are there ancillary fees baked into the dues, like range fees, locker fees, cart fees that we might not know, right? So just looking at that numerically can be a little bit dangerous. Member-owned clubs, there are two roles for the customer. We enjoy the leisure and social experience as a member, and we have an obligation as an owner to assure the continuity of the business into the future. And this is what we do. We take the income statement, we split it into these ledgers, the operating ledger and the capital ledger. And our goal is members of the operating ledger funds the member experience. It's consumed year in and year out by members enjoying the club. Little to no money persists financially over time. So all the operating dues that you pay in a given year are consumed by the fixed operating costs and the services and amenities that are provided to us. Our obligations as owners is on the capital ledger side. That's the amount of money that we need to generate to be able to reinvest in our club so we have fresh and up-to-date facilities and maybe the ability to add something new later on if that's something that we decide to do. And this is the chart that really changed club benchmarking. When Ray was going to do a presentation in California, we have focused on the income statement as the primary thing, as most businesses do. And there was a Fortune 50 CFO on the call, and he said, "Have you ever benchmarked the balance sheet?" And Ray said, "Yeah, it's been on my radar. I just haven't had a chance to do it." He goes, "Would you do that for me before you come out?" So he did the exercise, and he benchmarked about 100 clubs' balance sheets, and this was the result of that balance sheet. So when we look at the blue line there, that's the net operating margin, and you can see the median is 1%. We define break even as anything plus or minus 4% net operating margin. If it's operating money, then it can't be a financial driver. It's the vehicle to deliver the services and amenities to the members, and it's consuming the services and amenities at the club year in and year out. The revenue, that's the cash the clubs generate to be able to reinvest in themselves. So it's capital income that's the financial driver, not the operating. In terms of what the private club business model is versus what we're used to in the for-profit world. We don't make widgets, we're not a manufacturing company. We don't have something that we can sell for profit. Therefore, we don't have the profit to be able to reinvest. So it's not from the operating ledger side to provide the money for the fixed operating costs, because clubs are very high fixed costs, right? There's very little variable costs. And we need to generate the amount of capital necessary to make sure that things are fresh and up to date. This is your gross installed assets or your campus size or the footprint costs as I talked about. So this is your plant equipment against clubs of your revenue size. The other two charts that I showed you was against all clubs with golf there. I wanted to do this because what we know when we benchmark, if we put your total operating revenue in 25 is 5.2 million, and we put it at the median, now we're looking at very light clubs, and statistically speaking, geographic location is insignificant. So it really looks at that. There's 113 clubs in that data set. So your gross installed assets, excluding land, the plant and equipment, is above the median. You're in actually the 65th percentile. You're almost at $12.7 million of plant and equipment. And at some particular point, we're going to have to replace that. But it's also context in terms of how big is our footprint size, which also tells us why our dues have to be what they have to be, because we have to fund the footprint, okay? And because this is book value, anytime that we replace an asset, it's going to increase. So this thing about generating capital is an ongoing every year reassessment, because every time we replace that, inflationary costs or replacement costs are greater than book value. So it's a never-ending story. This is what we call the dues engine. So we have a normalizing ratio we call the full member equivalent. And basically what the full member equivalent is we take your total operating dues revenue divided by the top membership category annual dues. So for example, if your social members pay 50% of the full, it takes 2 social to make 1 full. The reason we do that is so many clubs have different categories of membership. It's a normalizing ratio from a benchmarking perspective. And so when we look at clubs of your revenue size, you're in that lower quartile of 240 full member equivalents. The median is 333. And then what you paid down there was 7,008 something in terms of that. So just above the median. So think of it as a 2-cycle engine. What's the experience that we want to have here at Greeley? Do we want a more exclusive experience? Therefore, we have to pay higher dues? Or do we want more members paying more flat fee, in that regard, and depending upon what's the experience that we want to have. And it flows that way up and down. Too often we hear, yeah, we want low dues, but we want low members too. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way, okay? And this is your dues ratio. So this is your operating dues revenue. There's no capital income in this, divided by the total operating revenue. And you're at 36%. And we call that you're in the leveraged operating model. What does that mean? It means you're more reliant on what we call non-dues revenue to help fund the club. Non-dues revenue being the ancillary revenue we get from our amenities, but specifically food and beverage. Any a la carte fees that we may have, range fees, locker fees, card fees, any non-member outside banquets and golf outings. COVID really helped us expose the leverage operating model because we couldn't have those outside banquets and things. I was at a club in Denver last fall, town hall meeting very similar to this, because they wanted me to come in and explain this because they're going to have a pretty significant operating deficit. And I said, okay, let's start peeling the onion back. And I said to management, I said, what was your proposed operating dues increase for the year for the budget? And they said 9.5%. So, okay, what did the finance committee say? Well, they said no, they were thinking 3%. But that's pretty typical in the budgeting process at private clubs. So I said, what did you end up settling at after all the arm wrestling and reiterations of the budget? 4.5%. Okay? 4.5%. What did you do with the ancillary revenue you needed to make a break-even budget? We shoved it into non-member outside banquets and golf. Okay. What's the number for the year? $1.1 million. What's the actual with 2 months to go? $404,000. That's why they weren't going to make it. They were relying on to be able to fund the operations and the services and amenities provided to us instead of that. For long-term financial sustainability, we want to start trending towards this upper, what we call a member-centric operating model, meaning the dues are 100% margin. We know from year to year exactly how much we're going to get and how to provide that level of experience that the members are looking for. At a minimum, we would say 50%, meaning you're getting half from the members, you're getting half from the non-dues revenue. If we look at 25's data, your total operating dues revenue last year was just shy of 1.9 million. Your non-dues revenue was 3.3. That's really tough to manage, right? Not everyone, unfortunately, can belong to a private club. You know, it's a privilege to belong to a private club. And so we have to, again, fund the footprint in doing in that regard. And it's important that we as members be able to provide that level of money so we can have the experience and to cover the fixed operating costs that we have. And this is a pie chart. You're here on this side, and you can see the top part here is really the overhead of the fixed costs, G&A, fixed charges, and building and maintenance. So what this is basically saying is a greater proportion of your dues dollars go to cover the overhead. So less money flows into the services and amenities, the golf, the food and beverage, and the non-golf sports, which are aquatics, health and wellness, and rackets. And it goes back to what I said before. Anytime we talk about cutting expenses at a club, ultimately what we're doing is cutting the member experience. Why? Because clubs are very high fixed costs. There's very little variable costs. We did some regression analysis just on expenses. About 7.5% to 10% of the total expenses of a club can be equated to efficiency. We're not saying they're not important by any means, but that's Jason and his team's job to make sure that that's not being wasted. So again, anytime we start talking about, hey, we need to look at the budget and start finding cuts, well, that's the service to you guys. You know, it's service hours, it's that we have open, all of those particular types of things that you want. So it's really important to understand what is the membership looking for in terms of an experience, and we're funding that from an operational standpoint. It's a tough chart. Anything that comes out of Ray's mind sometimes goes on a chart. This is an operating dues regression that we did. It was a multivariable regression, and we used two variables. The plant and equipment that we saw before, and what we call the total amenities subsidy, which is the net of all the amenities less the dues. And so when we regress that, simply put, you get a value in the gold box here of 0.92, a coefficient value of 0.92 or R squared, however you want to look at it. But what that's really saying is 90% of the variation between our operating dues and somebody else's dues can be explained by the footprint costs and the services and amenities that are provided to us. It really doesn't matter what somebody else's dues are so long as we're covering our footprint operationally. And that's really what that's saying. In this chart down here, this is just the plant and equipment, and that orange line is the predicted line, and you can see how closely these blue dots are to it. If you just the campus size, it's 0.84. Things like that, 0.12, 0.15, they're over the moon. This is 0.92. So pretty exciting stuff there. This is really how the flow of money goes from a member perspective. You have revenue coming from dues and non-dues. The expenses, and they're consumed by the member experience. Little money persists. The average tenure of a member is about 20 years. And during that 20-year period, about 85% of what a member pays flows through the operating ledger. So little to no money persists. You got the experience and the fun and the service provided to you. On the capital they invest in our existing asset replacement and something new in our operational capital. We can increase our cash reserve, or we can pay down our debt. This is the state of the fiscal plan, as you see here, and the strength of our balance sheet. And about 15% flows through the capital ledger. So understanding this, the financial drivers, the key forms here of understanding that A, the operating ledger, again, it's not saying it's not important, but it funds the member experience, simply put. And we need to generate the amount of money necessary for that experience that we want to have and to cover those fixed operating expenses. But we also have to generate the amount of money necessary to reinvest. And what does that look like? I'm going to throw food and beverage in here because it's generally a big trap. What this is really saying is you're minus 16%. What's that saying? 16 cents of every operating dues dollar goes to subsidize food and beverage. Common misnomer out there is that you can make money in food and beverage. Over 92% of the industry subsidizes food and beverage. So is it logical to think they're doing something wrong or inefficient? Not a restaurant. It's just not made for efficiency, right? You need a lot of volume sales in a restaurant to be able to do it. And the only way margin on revenue and do subsidy in a club. And not every member is going to come 3 times a day, 7 days a week. It's more about choice. What do we want in terms of the experience do we want to have? Do we want to be open for breakfast? Do we want lunch? Do we want dinner? Do we want to stay open until 2 a.m.? I mean, those are the things you have to understand. The more that we have those, the higher the expense, which means we have to cover that expense. I'm going to talk about net worth here again. For net worth to increase, we have to have what we call net available capital greater than our depreciation for net worth to increase. And if it's less than depreciation or net worth decrease, but it requires both existing and incoming members and their owners to contribute to capital. And so when I talked about this before, there's about 1,000 clubs on this data set here, and this is your compounded annual growth rate, minus 2.1% since 2006. So I can say here you're actually worth a little bit less than you were in 2006 from a net worth perspective. And you can see that the construction inflation is 3.3% historically, and we feel that that's the obligatory minimum, that is, as long as you're above that 3.3%, you're overcoming inflation. Virtually half of the industry are what we call undercapitalized, meaning they're not generating enough capital income to overcome the inflation. And that's a key point to look at. To put this into perspective, Amazon since 2006 is 52.5%, Macy's is minus 7.8%. Who's more relevant in today's marketplace, right? And that's what net worth over time shows you. It's competitive advantage and relevance in your marketplace. So when we look at this over time, over here, the reason this got up was your mineral rights that you have. So the mineral rights that were coming in were helping you get greater than depreciation in that regard. You have a little, this other one right here is what we call the COVID bump. There's a little bit of an initiation fee from people joining at that time. Also ERC money, right, that we use, or PPP money, whatever we got. But you can see from that point on, we've been going down. And that's what we need to change. And to be consistent with that, again, we need capital income that overcomes depreciation to be able to do that. This is Country Club of Virginia, and I want to make perfectly clear, I'm not trying to compare you to Country Club of Virginia. The reason that they allow us to use this is they made a fundamental decision, their board did in 1954, that not only were their members going to pay operating dues, they were also going to pay their fair share of the depreciation of the assets. So in essence, charging them capital dues. And what it did was profound, is it freed up the initiation fee income to be able to reinvest in the club into what you see today. And so that's the key point. If we can start today generating the amount of capital dues that we need to overcome the obligatory capital needs that we have here and start increasing our net worth, because everybody needs to increase their net worth, whether you're a business or an individual, we want to increase our net worth, that's what we have to do. And this is where you would be if you just did 3.3% since 2006, you'd be at a little over $4 million of net worth, and right now you're at $1.45 million of net worth. The gray line there is if you went above that 5% in that upper quartile. I just leave that to the side for now. But that's the importance of understanding why this is such a different business than what we're used to. We as members have to generate that money to be able to reinvest. Another metric we use is called the net to gross property plant equipment ratio. And it's a ratio to determine how fresh or depleted the assets are in the depreciation schedule. So you're going to fall somewhere between 0 and 100. The more it's been depreciated, the more towards 0 it's going to be. The more brand new it is, the more towards 100 it's going to be. And you're 18. And this is high level. This comes off your balance sheet. So my recollection on this would be just spitballing, because there's probably things on your fixed asset register that have been fully depreciated and replaced and are still on there drawing that down. So the only way you know for sure is to do a full-fledged asset evaluation and useful life study to get that for sure. But how this works, excuse me, It's capital investment that pushes the dot up, it's depreciation that pulls it down, and that oscillation happens every single year. You can see the median club in the industry is at 48%. Half of their assets have gone through their full depreciation cycle. And we feel at a certain point with a forward-looking capital plan, we can get to this 75th percentile, which is about 56%, and be able to oscillate against that, being proactive instead of being reactive. Clubs are very high fixed cost, capital intensive businesses. This is the capital intensity ratio for the private club industry. You can see 183%, so just below the power company and above the oil and gas company. What does this really mean? It takes about $3 of revenue to generate $1 of capital income. If you think about it, you have the driveway, you have the parking lot, you have the buildings, equipment, we haven't got to the golf course yet, so then we have the pool, we have the tees, greens, irrigation system, bunker, golf course maintenance equipment, golf course maintenance. Clubs are very capital intensive. So we have to understand that we have to keep necessary to do that. And this is the priorities ladder. Unfortunately, we got to pay debt first, and most clubs only generate enough capital income to pay debt service. And that really gets them into trouble. Very few fully get through their obligatory capital level. And that's what we have to understand and say, hey, we need to start now. It's best for our members to be able to generate that so we can start looking proactively at the replacement and doing the things that need to be done and maybe not so much of what we want to have done. Aspirational capital really comes from your strategic plan. Again, it's that strategic question, do we need to add anything that's going to help us attract that 42-year-old family so we can be relevant and competitive in our marketplace? And when you're not doing that, then hopefully we're increasing our cash reserve. But it takes some time and effort to really get to that particular point. Which brings us to the last slide I have here, and it's the investment return cycle. Increasing net worth and relevance, it takes members investing in capital to drive that cycle of growth. And this is where we have to be. And too often I get into clubs that are, lower restricted investable capital. They restrict the capital investment. They have narrow amenities and deteriorating facilities, low member satisfaction and lower demand, lower initiation fees and fewer members, and then decreased capital income. We call that the death spiral. And it happens too often because everybody says, well, we got to wait until we get more members. They're not going to come. We have to start now. And what we've seen when we talk about clubs that were doing capital projects in the economic meltdown, those that slowed down and still reinvested during that time came out of that recession much better than clubs that stopped or didn't do anything. So it's important to have an understanding to be flexible and say, well, we might not be able to do everything we want now, but we still have to continually reinvest in the club. And that's why we think looking at useful lives and being proactive at replacing those assets at the end of the useful life proactively is the key. And with that, you have the budget in front of you there. I'd like just remind you that that budget there is for the member experience, right? We should really be focusing on how much capital are we going to start generating going forward and how we're going to start replacing some of the things that we have here at the club. And we'll take questions after the other presentation, but thank you for now.
I just wanted to thank everybody for coming out to the annual meeting. Again, wanted to thank all the staff and all the work they do, all the work that Jason does. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Lindsay. Actually, one more thing. Sam Franzen, thank you for all of your service. We appreciated having you on the board. You're always our voice of reason, so we appreciate that. Now I'll turn it over to Lindsay to go through the financials.
Okay, so I'm going to bore you with some more numbers, but hopefully not too bad. So, looking at, you guys have two packets were maybe on your chair or potentially near you. The first one that we're going to look at is the comparative. of the prior year to current year, or sorry, the budget to actual, I should say. So that's gonna say the profit and loss budget versus actual at the top, January through December of '25. So a couple key points to point out is that overall for the year of '24 to '25, the debt of the club has been reduced by $660,000. During the year of '25 and '26, the club has actually not incurred any additional long-term significant debt. The cash position has also increased from 2024 to 2025. The budget, obviously when you're looking at the budget that we have here and from last year when we talked, we had proposed this budget that you'll see that the club was going to make $799,000. When you're looking at the actual for 2025, you can see that that obviously did not happen. There was a loss of the $515,681 that you can see in the current year. That is related to the fact that we do have an annual operating budget of $6 million, and then we do have the revenue and expense gap. Excuse me, sorry, I have a cold this week, so forgive me. So part of the things that you can see with the loss of 515, I do want you to take into consideration with that there were looking at my notes, $374,255 worth of expenses that were incurred and paid in 2025 that were all related to 2024. So if we're looking at that net loss for 2025 of 515, that is, I say inflated due to an additional $375,000 of costs that were incurred and paid for in 2025. Therefore, reducing our overall loss for 2025 to, we'll say, less than $200,000. The other additional thing with our budget, obviously, everyone is aware of this, there's not been significant financial statements or accurate financial statements, if you will, for the club's history. So we created those for 2024, and the budget was prepared off of those 2024 actual numbers. Obviously, some of those things were major guesses that we were taking a guess at, and that's how we prepared the budget. Wanted to be hopeful and optimistic, but things did come up, and things didn't shake out how I wanted it to. But we are confident with this 2026 budget that we have a set of realistic numbers in history to go back on for 2 years. Again, with our new budget, we are trying to close the revenue and expense gap that we significantly have. So with that, obviously everyone is aware that costs for everything are going up, from labor costs to food costs, to the fee that's, I say, stayed relatively the same. But also keep in mind that when we have food and beverage, for example, that no matter what, if there's 10 people in the restaurant eating versus 100 people in the restaurant eating, the kitchen and the staff all has to assume that it's going to be operating at maybe 100 people. So yes, that's a big extreme and a big exaggeration, but at the end of the day, the costs still have to be what the costs are, because we have to assume that people are going to come and eat dinner and order drinks and all the things, and so food and beverage does have to staff for those sorts of things. So yes, you would assume that maybe revenue goes up and the expenses maybe help with that, but at the end of the day, the costs still sometimes are what the costs are. Going back, that's not my slide. So with that, we have the other packet that you guys have, which is the profit and loss budget overview for 2026. I'm sure that you'll see that yes, there is up there the special assessment amount in the revenue portion of $779 that Jason will touch on here in a bit. But you also see and wonder maybe why we've budgeted 0 for capital dues, initiation fees, and legacy member dues. Well, that's because those are all items that are really just used for reserves, capital improvement type situations. This budget is strictly put together for just our operations. So we're not assuming that any capital dues, any initiation fees, or legacy member dues should be paid in to continue us, or to support operations going forward, which is why those are all 0. A couple other things that we're budgeted for on the very last page, is the capital improvements at the very bottom, expenditures of $150,000. So again, we were putting this budget together of truly just a strictly operation standpoint. This doesn't mean any major remodel, any lavish things changed and or done. it takes into account $150,000 of capital improvements. Those are things like last year that were done, the fencing around the exterior, the TVs and screens, or sunshades, I should say, on the veranda, the pond improvement project, those types of things. Yes, $150,000 seems like a lot, but at the end of the day, a place like this, $150,000 doesn't make a significant impact, that a lot of people would actually notice significant things. So with that being said, that's how we came up with our numbers of the special assessment to get there. And we are, I say, confident with this 2026 budget, since we do have multiple years financials going forward. So, any questions on any of the financials or budget or?
On the very last page of the 26 budget,
Yes.
there's like net other income, it's like the second to last line of minus 500,000. What's that?
So that is, if you look at the page before that, also it's a little bit of a mixture of the two. So you'll see the other income on that page before that says $2,400 that has the interest income budgeted. And then you go to that next page that has other expenses of the $502,600. So it's just saying that our net, the report is a little misleading. It's just a net of other income expenses really. And so it's just netting that $2,400 of interest income with that $502,600 of additional expenses to reduce our overall profit down to that $673.
Thank you.
Anything else?
What's the 325 taxes? Are you selling assets or what's generating that kind of tax liability?
The budgeted taxes for 2026 is the tax due on the sale of the mineral rights.
That was done in 25?
Correct. So that is a budgeted line item in 26 because that is cash flow that will have to go out to pay for that tax liability.
We didn't have to pay that during the year, 25?
Technically, yes. But that would have been estimated payments due. But ultimately, it would be due with a tax return, which is due May 15th, is when that will be remitted.
Shouldn't that just be a liability on the balance sheet? You don't have-
It definitely could be a liability on the balance sheet, yes, which is where my deferred revenue and gain is as well. But ultimately, this budget was put together to calculate our cash flow needed on hand for the operating year. So then we could make sure that we have enough cash generated for the year to operate and pay all said necessary bills.
Within the last fiscal year, 25, there's several items that are considerably higher than the budget. So when those occurred, did the board approve those individually, or was it approved after the fact, after the money was spent? What's the process for items, for lines in here that are significantly higher?
Sure. Do you have, I can speak generically to those. Do you have any line items specifically that you're looking at? I mean, I know that they do exist. I'm not doubting that by any means. Do you have any specific line items that stood out to you? I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, there was no non-necessary spending that was done by the board or by the club. Everything that was spent was really strictly required spending, from repairs and maintenance to.
How about equipment leasing from 181 to how do you budget 181 and you miss it by?
Sure, so some of that was also that a handful of leases were actually paid off during the year. So that's no longer needed. So those, it was determined at the end of the year to pay those off to reduce our required cash flow for 2026. But besides that, there was no other, I say, non-required or non-necessary expenditures needed during the year that were made. Anyone else? Yes.
Would it be possible to get the balance sheet?
I definitely could give you a balance sheet. A lot of times, giving more financial information out to people muddies the waters for people that don't necessarily look at financials all day long. So as a board, we just determined that the profit and loss and budget was the best to give out to everyone. But we can discuss with the board and they can determine from there. Yeah. Anything else? All right, here you go.
Thank you, Lindsay, appreciate it. All right, now we're gonna get to the fun part, get past the numbers and get some more numbers. Kind of go how we're gonna take care of some of this stuff. This is the chart I've been doing since 2016. I took out all the public courses out of here just to make it a little more relevant for us. So I give us the rounds played per year since that time. And this gives us a real good view into where, I did this last year too, where our room is as we move forward with new memberships. So you can see in the bottom there, we're about 19,000 rounds this year. Comparatively speaking to everybody else that's kind of in the area. What that tells me, the other places that I know pretty well, they're a little bit overprescribed. There are a lot of people that are hard to get a tea time. It's just a lot of this, that's what it is. They had a lot of growth in 2020, and so now they're trying to figure out how to accommodate all the members they decided to take in at that one time. I was talking to Mr. Olson about that. At the old club I was at, we had 60 members join in 2020, and it sounds cool, but it's way too much at one time. So you can't be able to handle them effectively and get it, and make sure you're servicing them properly. It's difficult to do that. So good prescribed growth, where you're netting 20, 30 members per year is actually kind of what you're going for. Brings in nice new revenue in terms of initiation fees, and then of course your monthly dues and things like that without overwhelming staff and also your facilities as you grow. In the same regard, if you look at Ptarmigan and Fort Collins Country Club, I know them. Ptarmigan themselves, they just they got bought by Heritage Golf last year. They just put in $2 million into their clubhouse and their restaurant. And they're also looking at now upgrading their irrigation system and doing all sorts of stuff as they are close to at capacity right now with membership. Sorry, that's Fort Collins Country Club that did that. $2 million for Fort Collins Country Club as well as doing irrigation system. Ptarmigan did the $2 million for their restaurant and their locker rooms as well. So what they're doing is they keep, like we talked about, they're gaining the new stuff, new facilities to gain new members in order to pay for the stuff they just put in. And that's what needs to happen for us. And so that's kind of what they're all growing. Everybody else is kind of staying a little bit kind of where they are. Harmony itself is just doing what it does. Same for TPC, that's a whole other $80,000 initiation fee and all that kind of good stuff. So it's a little bit different. But the thing is, the best part is we got room for growth. We get to, my whole goal was always 24,000 rounds a year. Allows you there's still some capacity to get on for tea times, as well as with an increase of probably 375 members you can get to for that. And then we're in a good spot. Next one. This is our goal here. We're trying to get to 300 members by the end of this year. That gets us to basically a break-even point the best we can, as well as bringing in about $450,000 worth of dues or initiation fees, and $260,000 worth of extra dues coming in with a net 30 gain of members. This helps everybody out with that. It keeps any dues increases to more of a minimum, and assessments go a little bit further away. They can actually be used for something for capital projects that we have out there in the hall for you to look at. If you don't do it, then you keep scrambling. You're always chasing your tail every single time. Deferred maintenance keeps going. We had a lot of that this last year. The stuff that was in the bunker, the pipe that we had to fix was the old cast iron pipes from 60 years ago that were fixed, and I think we got all that fixed right now. But that stuff, we start beating that stuff, start getting new, modern kind of thing, upgrading all our facilities with that kind of stuff. So here's going to be the new dues coming up for this, coming up March 1st. Proprietary goes at $725, juniors $575, non-residents $600, 75 to 79 $600, 80 to 85. Those were the ones that were the previous administration had put to zero. We're just going to go ahead and do half of the dues that they would be in whatever category that they lie, and then social goes to 300. This gets us more and more towards that balanced budget. takes care of that $700,000 gap, helps takes care of that $700,000 gap, excuse me. The remaining part of that comes from this, the assessment's gonna happen this year. So obviously pretty minimal. This helps us gain that $779,000 that Lindsay was talking about. Helps fill that gap between expenses and what our dues are paying, that we talked about to get to 50%, as well as putting money in the bank for capital projects that we need to have done. This is what happens when we're short of members, we need to get new members. This has to happen in order to keep functioning as a club and not losing money all the time. So what we do is how we get new members. Control our growth, while also monitoring how we grow, how fast we grow, what we're going to do with that growth, and who becomes a part of our membership. Also important. Before when I started here, it was kind of a free-for-all. Everybody was kind of, whoever had $0 could get in and basically join the club and then pay their dues, which always led to some troubles of collecting money, whatever it might be. So now we have our value at our initiation fee of $15,000, which is basically going to be your brand. 15 is your brand. That's who we are as a club. That's who we should want to be as a club. So we're going to do this kind of initiative for everybody for starting March 1st through the end of July. We're going to keep the initiation the same for all new members, although they have this payment option to do it. Half dues for the rest of this year, and then next year on January 1st they go to whatever category they are in. And then of course they don't pay this first year assessment here. Our way we're going to do this is anybody that can do that, bring somebody in, we get them a $500 credit towards their account. There's no limit to this, and just kind of build it up as you go. This was the first place I went to this year where last year we signed up about 20 new golf members, and maybe 4 of them were referrals. The rest were either people that had left and joined back, or were just some random people that joined. That's new. Usually at the previous club, it was always somebody bringing in, there's always a referral. And that's how you click. That's how membership grows fast. Is that you have to bring the people that are like yourself, that want to be a part of this club and allow it to grow and just enjoy it as you guys enjoy it. Just grabbing referrals off the internet is usually a slower way to do that, or advertising or anything like that. So I want to just encourage you guys to really help yourselves out. Just really help us grow. Bring them to me. I'll take care of the rest. We've honestly had a pretty good first couple of months with it. To be honest, it's been the best 2 months I've had in doing this for 9 years. We had 5 new golf members already, and then 2 new social. So January and February to get that kind of interest and growth, that's pretty good. So we're in a good start. So now we just have to keep growing with that. So it shouldn't be too hard. If you guys need help with this at all, at any aspect, just let me know. These need to be new members, not people that left and back, that kind of stuff. So that's how we grow. So that's our role. Yeah. Pretty simple for all this. If we get net 30 members, we're on a good track, and we kind of keep moving forward, and then move forward into 2027 with a very positive outlook. Because we looked at 2025, I know the staff and I did, as a big reset from what had happened in 2024, and we were able to kind of turn things around and kind of just get things focused, cleaned up, organized, get rid of some of the chaos that was going on, and get everybody, food service going, everything going properly. That's at least the way we want it to be. We still have a long ways to go. We still have other things we have to improve on. But as we learn more about you, and you learn about us, we can start continuing to do that. So we appreciate some of your patience here for the last couple of years, and we're on the right track. So I'm kind of excited for it. So let me know how I can help, and then we'll get there. So yeah. Any questions on it for Mr. Olson or for Lindsay or for me? We can do that now if you want.
Jason, question.
Yeah.
Just point of clarification, you're looking specifically for 30 plus new golf members.
Golf
not-
members.
So is there a goal around social as well, or any incentivization around social membership as well, or we're just solely focusing on those golf members right now?
Solely golf members. To be honest with you, lots of the social ones, they're being subsidized by most of the golf members, so subsidized the social members. Great to have, but that's typically how it kind of works in the club. So if I can get more proprietary, and then, right now we have about 33 junior members, so the numbers are a little bit off in terms of what you want for your percentages, but not terrible, so that's kind of yeah.
How much is it for a junior membership?
It's still $15,000, but it's only $5,000 down that they got to put, and then it's $1,000 annually until they either pay it off or they reach the age of 40, and it goes to fraction.
With the assessment, does the $50 a month capital orders go away, or is it $600 still staying?
It's still there. Yep. Yep. But that's the total. It's not 775. It's just 725 total. Yes.
So, two-part question. The first one is, that new fee structure, is that gonna reset everybody's, all the different deals people had and all that kind of stuff? We're gonna go, that's the base that everybody's gonna pay now, is that a fair assessment?
It does. Exactly right. Yeah. So it kind of gets everybody rowing in the same way. It's kind of what we're looking for.
And then when I hit 85, I don't pay dues.
Correct.
Yes.
You're almost there. I know it. We're going for this.
I'm gonna die on this course.
Anybody else?
Okay, I just want to wrap things up tonight, and I want to make sure and recognize Jason. You know, he took over the reins a year ago, and we've brought him a long way, I believe, and I really appreciate all his effort and everything he does. So if I could get a round of applause for Jason. I can tell you, he worked really hard with all of our thinking and planning and what we need to do as a club. All we want to do is keep it sustainable. It's our club, we love it, and you know, I think the board is doing a pretty good job of recognizing the reality of what the costs are and what we need to do as a club. And the thing about this that we do know is we want you guys to bring us members. Because in the past, when we advertised and brought members in from wherever they arrived from, a lot of them didn't turn out to be good members. And the club is only as good as the members. And if we can get members that feel like owners and treat this club well and treat each other well, we're going to do a lot better job of keeping members, and we're going to be a lot more prosperous going forward. So we'd appreciate everybody trying to bring any friends you can forward for us to get them as a club member. I've got a couple in mind myself already picked, and I hope everybody else can do that too. And then I do want to take just a moment. Maddie is now a clubhouse manager. I think the guys did a great job, him and Greg, of elevating our food and beverage performance, producing a lot better product, providing a lot better service. And then Greg is now the food and beverage manager. So if I could get a round of applause for Maddie. We've also got Jason here, a superintendent. We're very excited about all the things he's done with the club, keeping the course in really good order, and then all the work he did with the guys at 4X of building a new pond, which we're very good, is our expense for water came down quite a bit. And Jason did a really good job of keeping the course green, but only using as much city water as possible. So we're lucky to have him, and I think he's going to continue to do really good things for our golf course. So I want to give Jason a round of applause also. Brandon, I'm sorry, I don't know what the hell. Brandon, I apologize, but everybody knows it's Brandon, and that's on me. So anyhow, I think that'll do it. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for being members of the club. And we'll continue to try to do the best job we can as a board to make good decisions and lead us forward. We had a lot of tough things last year to deal with, but I will tell you, not nearly as many tough things as we had the year before that, or even worse yet, the year before that. So I feel like we got a lot of good things going. Our line of credit is still paid off. Our cash position's okay. And a year ago, I couldn't have told you that. We had a lot of things we had to take care of and clean up from 2024. But thank goodness they're all behind us. We don't have any real problems right now, other than trying to get these extra members and get our dues income up. So we look forward to a good year. Samantha.
I know. Look, you guys, I'm not even on the board anymore. I still have questions about you guys. But, I was just curious because we got some really great information at the very beginning on all of the projections and where the club lies. When we make these adjustments to like a capital assessment, capital dues, all of those things, increased dues, where do we start falling on that line that we saw? Are we starting to land more in the median, or are we, like, if we're trying to hit goals based on those numbers that were presented at the beginning, are we getting closer, or are we going to be back here again next year and then it's, you know, another big jump? I'm curious. I think that's good information for all of us to have.
For us to get to the median on this, we would have had to increase dues way more than we ended up increasing dues.
Increase them.
Well, that's an ongoing challenge for the board because there's a lot of people who don't want us to increase dues, and there's a lot of people who are willing to increase them. I would certainly pay my share, but it's always tough to find the right balance. I will tell you that this increase is helpful, and our goal as a board, as we learned through some education, and by the way, Jason is attending meetings every month with the Country Club Managers Association. You know, we knew when we got Red Landscapes that there's really good resources out there, and that's where Jason's getting a lot of good information by meeting with the other club managers, seeing what the best practices are. So I want to commend him for doing that. Our goal would be to have operations, you know, slick and have all of our assessments, initiation dues, all of that go into capital for future improvements. But I will tell you, this club has been a far cry from that for the last 20 years. And I think we're getting closer. We try to be sensitive to everybody's concerns. If we can get these other 30 members to answer your question, I think we're going to be very close to that, covering 50% of our revenue with dues. So I hope that's helpful.
No, it's great. It's perfect. That's exactly.
And we could have increased the dues a couple $100 a piece, and we would have had, I believe, we would have had a lot of kickback.
Yeah.
So we did a very modest increase on dues, and by the way, we went to round numbers, so it was a lot easier.
Yeah.
I think that was a good idea, and we're trying to make the best decisions we can. We're spending our money wisely. We did have to pay off some equipment leases last year, about $60,000. Now we won't have to pay equipment leases anymore. And Brandon does a great job of taking care of the equipment and did a wonderful job of assessing all the equipment, helping us figure out what to do. I hope we never have to lease equipment again. But that's the kind of decisions prior boards made, and because we didn't ever have any cash. So ideally, we'd buy our equipment and we'd depreciate it, and we'd be a lot stronger financially. So paying off these leases was a good idea. We had unexpected things like the sewer line out here that ended up costing us 30 grand, but we put in pump outs or whatever they're called. So from now on, we can clean that out easily with very little expense. We're trying to make good decisions for the future. The new pond will pay for itself just in water savings. And more importantly, we had permission from the city of Greeley to go do it, so we did it. Because in future years, that might not be very easy to do as regulations get harder and tougher and water gets to be a more scarcer supply. So I want to really thank 4X for the job they did, Colby, JD, and Josh, and they were very generous in what they did for this club, so can't thank them enough. If there's nothing else, I'll wrap it up. Stick around for dinner.
Guys, one last question. Can you explain the changes and alterations or whatever that are going on right now with the golf course? There's some additional tee boxes being done or something?
That would be better if it, Brandon, do you want to talk, or? I'm not very suited to handle that, but golf committee, Jeremy. I don't need any longer tee boxes, Terry. Tell you that. But it is part of getting younger members, and we do hear from a lot of them that they want the golf course to be more challenging. I'll let Jeremy.
Well, Scott hit the nail on the head there. Ultimately, as we look at that membership, that younger membership that Tom mentioned, that 42-year-old or younger, as you see a lot of these courses, the younger members are wanting more distance, wanting more difficult golf course. So as a greens committee, golf committee, those are those things we're trying to do at minimal cost to increase that younger membership.
I'm not concerned so much about the cost. I'm just concerned about the ground we'd have to work with. There's not enough room to lengthen these holes without creating some safety issues.
Yeah, and we've gone through that. Greens committee, Brandon has done a good job of kind of evaluating that as things get going. These tee boxes get completely built, ready. There will be some safety, some signs, some mirrors, things like that that will be there to provide that safety.
Could you go into a little more depth on, and all this is hearsay because we can't get on the court now, but there's a tee box, I guess it's going in behind 17 green, somewhere in that neighborhood. And I'm just concerned about people teeing off there and people putting out on number 7. Is there any chance of liability issues if you get hit there?
It's a golf course, so somebody could get hit anywhere.
I'm just saying from an insurance perspective.
Yeah, we are putting trees, we're moving trees, so there will be some, like I said, once we get out there, we're able to kind of evaluate what that looks like.
Well, we don't get any information, that's the problem. Anything about it.
Yeah. Okay, and we can do a better job of, I'll work with Brandon to get some more stuff in the newsletter with, regards to that.
Also, is this route easy? Walking March, April. I don't know if you see water on the court. I don't want to damage course either, but I pay for a card pass.
Yeah.
I get a refund. 2 months. I can't do it.
We're constantly evaluating. I'll say that. Yeah. The goal is to get carts out as soon as possible. So, without damaging the course, yes. I don't have it. Yeah.
Going on.
Brandon's using the water.
There'll be snow on the ground most of the year.
Yeah. As soon as the carts are able to be out without damage, we'll get them out.
Yeah, take a vote on that one.
Hey, Jeremy, what is the timing of the assessment and the payment of the assessment?
So we're going to do the same thing we did last year, quarterly assessment, or if you want to pay it up front, I think I'll let Jason, I don't know the exact date, but.
Yeah, it's going to be April 1st, July 1st, October 1st, and January 1st.